The car has not moved in 4 months. The registration is expired. There's a slow leak in the rear left tire that nobody has fixed. The radio only picks up 2 stations, and the air conditioning stopped working 3 summers ago. But when someone offers a fair price, sometimes a very fair price, the owner pauses, looks at the car for a long moment, and says no. Not maybe, not let me think about it, just no. And then they walk back inside and do not talk about it. People around them are confused. The car is costing money to insure. It takes up space. It is not being driven. By every rational measure, selling it makes complete sense. But the owner does not operate from a rational measure when it comes to this particular object. They operate from somewhere much older than logic. To understand why, you have to understand what a first car actually is, not what it does, what it is. For most people, the first car arrives during a very specific window of life, late adolescence, the period when the self is still being constructed, when identity is not yet fixed, when the world is simultaneously thrilling and terrifying and full of possibility that has not yet been tested. The brain during this period is highly sensitive to experience. Memories formed between the ages of 15 and 25 carry a disproportionate emotional weight. Psychologists call this the reminiscence bump. Events from that window feel more vivid, more defining, more real, even decades later. The first car does not just sit inside that window, it becomes the window itself. It is the object that was present during the late-night drives with no destination, the arguments in parking lots, the long silences on the way home from something that changed everything. The cassette that got stuck in the deck and played the same album on repeat for 3 weeks until nobody minded anymore. The first car absorbed all of it. Every scratch on the door has a story the owner has never told anyone. Every stain on the passenger seat is a memory that never needed to be explained because the person who was sitting there already knows. This is what makes the first car different from every car that comes after it. Later cars are transportation. The first car is biography. But biography alone does not explain refusal. People keep journals, photographs, letters. They do not all refuse to sell them. Something else is happening with the car, something more psychological and more uncomfortable to admit. When a person sells their first car, they are not just transferring an object, they're handing it to a stranger, and that stranger will drive it without knowing any of it. They will not know what happened in the back seat on a Tuesday in October. They will not know why the left turn signal takes 3 extra seconds to activate and why that delay became a private joke between 2 people who were no longer speaking. The stranger will just drive it, maybe repaint it, maybe gut the interior, maybe run it into the ground and sell the parts. That thought is viscerally painful for some people, not metaphorically painful, actually painful. The brain processes social rejection and the loss of meaningful objects through overlapping neural pathways. The prospect of an object that carries your identity being treated as though it has none triggers a genuine emotional response, not sentimentality, closer to grief. There's a concept in psychology called the extended self. The idea, developed by consumer behavior researcher Russell Belk, is that people do not experience their possessions as external objects. They experience them as extensions of their own identity. What you own, in a psychological sense, is partly what you are, and the first car, acquired during the most identity-sensitive period of life, becomes one of the most deeply integrated extensions of self that a person can have. This means that selling the car is not perceived as a transaction. It is perceived below the level of conscious thought as a kind of self-amputation. That is why the owner does not explain it well when asked. They say things like, "It has sentimental value," or "I'm just not ready yet." These are accurate but incomplete. What they cannot quite articulate is that the car contains a version of themselves they are not sure they can access any other way. A younger version, a less complicated version, a version that had not yet made the irreversible decisions that shaped everything that came after. There is also something worth examining about what the first car represents in terms of personal agency. For many people, it was the first major object they had full control over, not a shared family television, not a bedroom in someone else's house, a machine that moved when they decided it would move and stopped when they decided it would stop. The sense of sovereignty that comes with that is not trivial. It is, for a lot of people, the first taste of genuine autonomy. The car did not have a curfew. The car did not have opinions about choices. The car went where it was told, carried what it was given, and asked for nothing except fuel and occasional maintenance. In a season of life when almost every other relationship involved some form of negotiation or judgment, the car was unconditional. That kind of loyalty, even from an inanimate object, leaves a mark. Now consider the economics of attachment. Behavioral economists have documented a pattern called the endowment effect. People consistently value things more once they own them than they valued them before. The longer the ownership, the stronger the effect. And the effect is amplified dramatically when the object is tied to strong autobiographical memory. Studies have shown that when people are asked to price objects they own, they routinely demand 2 to 3 times more than buyers are willing to pay. This gap is not greed. It is the unconscious attempt to place a monetary value on something that was never actually about money. The market price of the car is irrelevant to the psychological price of what losing it feels like. The buyer is offering to pay for the car. The owner is being asked to give up something the buyer does not even know exists.
There's also a less examined dimension to this. Keeping the first car is sometimes a quiet act of defiance against the pressure to move forward. Adult life constantly demands progression. Upgrade your phone, upgrade your home, upgrade your career, upgrade your relationships. The cultural message is unrelenting. What you had before was a stepping stone. Move on, improve. But the first car resists that logic. It is not an upgrade from anything. It is the original. And choosing to keep it, even when it is impractical, even when it barely runs, is a way of saying that not everything needs to be replaced to have value, that some things are worth keeping exactly because they are old and worn and full of history that cannot be transferred. This is not irrationality. It is a psychological counterweight to a world that treats disposability as progress. What people misunderstand about those who refuse to sell is that they assume the attachment is about the car. It is not about the car. The car is a container. It holds something that exists nowhere else in the physical world, an irreplaceable record of who someone was before the responsibilities of adult life required them to become someone slightly different. Every subsequent version of themselves had to be negotiated, had to be practical, had to accommodate other people, other pressures, other timelines. But the person who drove that car the first time, with the windows down and no particular destination, and the specific feeling that the future was open and unwritten, that person did not have to negotiate with anyone. The car is the only object left that remembers that person the way they remember themselves. And this is the realization that changes everything about how the behavior looks from the outside. The person sitting in the garage next to a car that has not moved in months is not being irrational. They are not being sentimental in a weak or indulgent sense. They are doing something quietly profound. They are refusing to let the physical evidence of a version of themselves be dissolved into someone else's ordinary Tuesday. The car is not what they are holding on to. It is proof that they existed, fully and freely, before the world asked them to be useful.